mix. So
Cool.
I'm
All
all
right.
about the good video. Someone just told me I was their favorite ASMR VC.
Mm. You know what? Let's consider ourselves recording. Your your people's favorite ASMR VC. Does that make you feel good?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that,
Because
but
I mean, you know how people are always like
hilarious.
they hate the sound of their own voice. Like,
Oh yeah.
what do you think your voice sounds like?
I mean, I can't stand it, but now I can stand it after doing YouTube for about a year.
Yeah, I guess you kind of get used to, until you start to do audio stuff all the time, you don't really know what your voice sounds like otherwise. But all right, my first go to question might not be applicable to you because it looks like that you were like working as a software engineer even when you were in high school. Like, have you ever had any other job like flipping burgers or anything like that, or have you just been in tech the whole time?
That's hella funny because that's what my dad literally told me when I was 15, that he wishes that my first job was flipping burgers. But yeah, I mean, tech gave me my shot. We didn't grow up that well off, and tech gave me everything I got. So I am true believer. Like, is there a clear mirror here for tech? I am Star Trek: The Next Generation tech optimist on where this stuff can go if properly thought through.
Well, so that might throw a spanner in my second go-to question, which is what's the worst job you've ever had? Like, could you even answer that or
I worked at a bad startup,
yeah.
and it's not even on my LinkedIn. It was that bad.
Mm.
It was the summer. It was the summer after the .com bust,
Hmm.
and I was a Stanford computer science, student, and it was, I think, between my junior and senior year. And so the .com had already, .com boom had busted. I found an internship at a B2B startup that um, never shipped and never signed a customer and was just
Mm.
burning investor money for that whole summer. So it was a good exercise in knowing what bad startups look like.
The good converse to that is who, if I pressed you, was the best boss you ever had?
Oh man. The funniest thing is that now he actually works at Initialized Capital with me. So Andrew Sather, I don't know, it's a toss up. I work with two of the people who are some of the best bosses I ever worked with. Jen Wolf, who's our COO, gave me my first design job. Um, and then before that, Andrew Sather created Adjacency, which was the first e-commerce, the design firm that created the first Apple e-commerce store for Steve Jobs. So I got to work with him when I was 16 years old, and he gave me my first coding job writing Perl in 1998. So both of them, in various ways, I've learned a lot from, and that's part of the reason why I get to work with them day to day now, which is very fun.
Is that a fun thing to eventually go back and give your previous bosses become their bosses?
Well, the my favorite thing about working with people is the best people are self managing.
All right, you just stole another question. What is the quality that most makes you want to work with people?
I mean, smart gets things done. I know that's two qualities, but when those two are in combination, it's really quite magical, actually. Because you meet a lot of smart people, they have amazing ideas, but then there's no outcome. And then on the flip side, there are people who get things done, but maybe they do a lot of activity, but it's not the right activity. And the combination of those things is actually quite magical and sort of the minimum set to success.
Well, this is sort of along that same line, but is there a quality that you found most of the successful people you've worked with have had in common?
Other directedness,
What
I
does that
think.
mean?
Um, so it's empathy is half of it, right? Some people are incredibly empathetic because you can sit down with them and they understand you and where you come from. Um, but then they're not, they might like let that wash over them, right? Other directedness is sort of like empathy plus bias to action. So being able to not only feel the problems and feelings of the person sitting across from you, but then to be able to markedly improve that person's situation consistently in all interactions, which is really important and sort of the core to servant leadership. which I think is underplayed especially in tech.
I heard you tell a story once about going to dinner with Peter Thiel. I think you were working at Microsoft at the time, and he wants you to come work for him. I guess maybe Palantir was starting up or something. Or anyway, long story short, he offers to write you a check on the spot if you'd come join him, and I think you turned him down. Can you tell that story real
Yeah,
quick?
absolutely. I mean, I was 22, 23 years old, knew nothing about technology other than how to build it. And friends of mine was starting a company with Peter Thiel. It was about the time he wrote the $500,000 check to Facebook. So he was well known. I had him come speak at Stanford a bunch of times. So it wasn't like I didn't know who he was. Everyone knew he was a great founder. Um, and he said, "How much a year do you make?" I told him it was 70 grand. He, wanted to write a check for that amount to get me to quit my job because it was, just to bring it down to zero risk. And I said no. Um, I, you know, didn't really know anyone who was working on B2B enterprise software for the government. It wasn't hot at the time. All of tech press was sort of, the Wall Street Journal, and I didn't read on Time magazine about um, selling B2B software to the government. And that was a big lesson. The big lesson I think there was all the interesting things that are actually happening in the world are happening in small teams of people who trust each other, who are super capable, deciding to go work on a real problem. And most of the hot things that you hear about are basically the thing you should have worked on 9 to 18 months ago. They're sort of the second or third hand retellings of things that are going to be the future. And, possibly you missed it. Then again, like just as often as that happens, um, that someone can emerge with a far better product or solution, even for something that is, far along and has a lot of competition. Like, DoorDash, I think is a good example of that.
Right. So I believe you turned him down. So I guess he stayed at Microsoft. But when a
I
young
joined a
person
year later. Yeah.
when a young person comes to you and says, "All right, I want to get into tech. Should I go for a small team, a startup, or should I go to an established company, or should I go to the best team out there?" Like, what's your usual advice?
I mean, if you have a choice, go to a team that is growing fast, that has product market fit. And then if you can get a seat on the rocket ship, you don't ask, what function or what role. You just find a way on it, and then you'll learn a lot more. And that's the tricky thing about startups is that, probably 9 out of 10 of them are just not going to make it. And so it isn't enough to say, I want to work at a startup. Let me find any startup that will have me. Um, the better path is to find the startup you believe in that has the smartest possible people there. And in abstraction, that's the best thing you can do, short of having a crystal ball.
Uh, what's the number one way that you see founders screw up their startups?
I mean, the number one thing over and over again is just not making something that people actually care about at all. That that's by far and away the number one reason why someone would not make it is
Is it
it's
because
just
it's
not better.
something is it because it's something they care about but no one else does? Is it because they're trying to guess what people care about and they get it wrong? Like how are they swinging and missing
Yeah,
on
they're
that?
often just guessing and getting it wrong, and they're not thinking through how what they're doing could actually be materially better, faster, cheaper at the point of purchase, like at the point where a customer decides. And then often what they don't realize is how high that bar actually is. The bar is often 10 times higher than if you just have a conversation with someone about it and you ask, oh, do you have this problem? We can solve it with X, Y, and Z. If you have a conversation, they're going to say in front of you, they want you to like them. There's all these interpersonal aspects. They're going to say, oh yeah, I totally want that. And then you'll run off and build it. And then when it's time to here, put your credit card in here, they're not going to do it. That's the trick, is believe the believe the actual close, right? Believe when the money hits your bank account, then they care and they want it. And even then, the first war is how do you get them to give you money at all? The second war is how do you keep them forever? And that second part is even harder.
What truths about like human nature or like human behavior do you think venture capitalists understand that maybe other people don't? Like, and I'm even talking about like either the behavior of founders or the behavior of markets. Like, what do the best VCs intuitively grok that other people don't?
Shoot. If you ask the opposite question, I would there are a lot of things VCs don't seem to get.
All right, then do
Oh
it. Do the
man.
opposite.
I think the thing that I'm most scared about in venture capital period is that it takes so long to figure out if someone is good, and then the credentials necessary are relatively daunting. So I actually think that people just generally rely on credentials way too much. Like they're just pattern matching. And then the pattern match is A, wrong, and then B, um, I mean, potentially bad for society. That's what I worry about when I think about venture capital. It's like when Sandhill is very, very good at funding um, basically the like frankly people like my background. It's like went to Stanford, worked at a startup, fast growing startup, have a network. It's like, I'm from central casting is what I
You tick all
realize.
the boxes, yeah.
Yeah. And that I think is now that I meet a lot of founders and now that I spend a lot of time in ideas and I have, hundreds of millions of dollars to deploy, that's what keeps me up at night because the system has a lot of capital. There's a lot more capital coming in. In fact, the public markets are going to force feed hundreds of millions, if not billions, of additional capital into a system that is already using antiquated and probably wrong measures of which teams are going to succeed. So that's what keeps me up at night as a VC. There's too much reliance on the resume and not enough reliance on first principles and direct experience with markets and teams.
Well, this is sort of kind of a resume question, but what's the greatest resource an entrepreneur can have to be successful? And that's different than asking skill, like, okay, be smart or whatever. I'm saying resource, like is it, having a lot of time, having passion for any, actually, I'm putting words in your mouth. What's the greatest resource a successful entrepreneur can have behind them?
I guess my time from Y Combinator taught me that I don't know. I don't have a good word for it. It's a mix of formidableness plus stick to itness. It's not enough, you know, Babe Ruth, for instance, I don't know if he did this or not, but in what was it, Game 3 World Series against the Cubs, he walks out and he points at the stands, and a lot of people do that, right? But the reason why we're talking about that story today, many many years later, in a game that I don't even actually totally understand, but I remember that story, and we tell that story over and over to each other because that is what we need. Is like you need, the thing about founders is they are able to go in and point to the stands, and then the ball actually goes there, and that's a miracle. And you know, I don't know, it's tough because it is a mix of privilege and luck, but then also the thing that you have control over is um, whether or not you quit. And whether you do the smart things to maximize your chance of putting the ball in center field for the home run.
These are broadish, but also simple. What do you think the biggest narrative or story in tech is right now at the start of 2021?
What is going on with the public markets right now? It's a little
Mm,
bit crazy, right?
mm.
I mean, I think the public markets are leading even the late stage private markets, which for some time people said were really crazy. They're not looking crazy right now. They're looking like they were prescient. And so the next year or so will be a wait and see game because as you saw, people even couldn't figure out the right price for the IPOs. And so, in an unprecedented fashion, watching Roblox say, we're not going to price our IPO right now. We need to see what happens is a little unprecedented. And so I think we're all I'm checking my stocks app every day um, just so that I better understand what's going on with the macro picture. And the reality, though, is like early stage is unchanged, I think. But the late stage, it matters a lot for quite a lot of people in our portfolio.
What's the most overrated, played out, or whatever narrative in tech right now?
Ooh, all right. I actually think the death of San Francisco is probably super, super, super overplayed, but I'm
I
also
wanted to ask
from the
that
Bay
question.
Area.
Right, yeah, go ahead.
Much love to all the people who are leaving. And honestly, uh, you know, I am excited to stay because I think, rents are down 30%. They're probably going to continue to trend down. Commercial real estate is cheaper than it's been in many, many years. And big tech is leaving, and that's a good thing because I actually think that means there could be, well, A, hopefully the artists return, right? It becomes more livable, but B, I think the builders can come in return. And if you're early in your career and you want to create things that nobody else has ever created and you want to make it for a billion people, San Francisco can be that mecca again because it'll be affordable for this short period of time. And a lot of the people who have left, they are the most legendary people who are, if they stayed, they would have to pay a tax of millions, if not tens, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. So I don't begrudge that. People are, entitled to make their own decisions about it. And I'm staying because this is my community. I grew up here. And I'm also excited about that next generation.
What's the most underreported story in tech right now? The under the radar story in your mind?
I'm super excited about what's happening with GPUs. Honestly, I think that Moore's law is actually still active. It's alive and well in particularly mobile scenarios with GPUs, and I think people are underplaying what that means for society. And for a good reason because people have actually lost so much money on robotics. Like I think you go down Sand Hill and everyone has a story about losing tens if not hundreds of millions of dollars on robotics. Um, so I think the super contrarian view that we are investing into is that actually, if you look at ImageNet, if you look at what NVIDIA is doing with their latest generations of new GPUs that are very low power, this is actually starting to be the dawn of practical robotics. And, we're pretty excited about it. You're going to see it in industrial scenarios and factories first. And then after that, I mean, I'm sort of excited about what that means for even simple consumer things. Like, you're going to have robotic vacuums that actually have full slam and that don't do the random walk.
Hmm.
And that's not even the imaginative version of it, right? I, I'm excited about that, but I also get why people are not investing because so many people have a lot of scar tissue around practical robotics as well.
Wrap up with sort of some kind of rapid fire ones, like for example, when slash where do you go to get your best ideas, or when you need to get the juices flowing, what do you do?
Oh God, this is the most VC answer. I go on my Peloton bike right now, but it's really helped me a lot. Honestly, I was a skeptic. I didn't believe in it. I got it very late because I had to, and then consistent exercise is actually just it makes sense though, right? If you take care of your hardware, your software runs better. So it, it's too obvious, but that's got to be it for me.
What's an app on your phone or that you've been using lately that you're evangelical about that maybe I haven't heard of that's a great tool?
Well, there was a company out of one of the recent YC batches called Cron that is doing. I mean, I live and die by my calendar, and so I'm pretty excited about that one, and I use it absolutely every day, and I'm pretty excited about what they're going to be able to show pretty soon.
Uh, what's your hobby?
Oh man, making videos actually.
Mm.
I bought so much camera equipment. My wife said either you have to use this stuff or you got to get rid of it. And so that was about a year ago. And so for work, I've been really enjoying doing my YouTube channel and having interviews, and but also just dabbling in cinematography and storytelling and storyboarding and writing scripts and, acting them out and stuff. But then at home, I mean, I have a 1-year-old and 5-year-old. So
Hmm.
um, I I love just putting together like a video recording of literally like every day of their lives. And we just go back as a family and watch it. So I learned that from Casey Neistat.
This is serious rapid fire because these are all binaries. So, Beatles or
Beatles for
Stones?
sure.
Beatles or Elvis?
Beatles,
Tupac or
Tupac,
Biggie?
West Coast,
Coke or
Coke,
Pepsi? iOS or
iOS.
Android? Star Trek or Star
Ooh, Star
Wars?
Trek for sure.
Why Star Trek over Star Wars? You got to make an argument for one of those that like you got to if you're going to plant a flag, make an
All
argument for
right.
one.
So Beatles, John Lennon, no question, hero. Let's see. Star Trek, because there's actually, especially the next generation, there is a cosmology to it that I want to bring about in society. And it's really funny because I watched it growing up, um, knowing that I wanted to work in tech, knowing that I wanted to work with computers, and I wanted to, you know, I mean, I apologize for being so earnest about this, but I believe that tech is here to actually push us forward in society. And I'm never going to apologize for that. And what Gene Roddenberry, was able to show was, in a totally fictional world, here's what leadership looks like. Here's how we build a society that hopefully is better. Um, and he did it in a way that I, that's almost a true north. Like I want to, I want to build a better, more just society. And the prime directive alone in Star Trek is, you could write essays about what that means for how we should engage with other people in our lives and what that means for leadership. And I do think that we in tech need to spend more time thinking about that because people don't spend enough time. We were the nerds who were picked on and bullied when we were kids. And then now, like it or not, there's a lot more responsibility for tech than there ever has been.
I'm a next generation kid myself, and I have often wondered if that's why I ended up where I ended up. But all right, so very, very last question is a dealer's choice. Favorite quote, if you have one that comes to mind, or the book that you insist everybody have read in their life.
Oh, God. I guess in terms of books, it's a little bit of a toss up, actually. Can I do two?
Sure.
Honestly, one is Hackers and Painters by Paul Graham, just because he taught me that, as an engineer, I didn't have to just have a boss. I didn't have to work for other people. I could be a founder. And he did it in a way that was really underscored like you can be a polymath, right? Like I love that he mixed painting, which is sort of on its face, like very separate and opposite almost to like the technical background you need to build software, but he merged it in a way that actually helps people, right? Like we don't need more tech people who are only about the tech. We need more tech people who are awakened to the needs of the people around them and in ways, and that's all the opportunity out there, right? The world doesn't need more, photo sharing, local events, that, those types of apps. Like we need things that are actually helping people get jobs or, learn new things they could never do, help people you know get up in their world in the world, right? And so yeah, I like that there is a way to do tech that is not um the sort of closed-minded, short-sighted way that I think it can easily be the cynical view of tech. I think the criticisms are valid, but in order to actually truly make a difference, we have to believe that we can do something more.
You said two books. What was the other one?
The other one is actually to the point of like other directedness. I thought that the book that I find helps people who are very young the most actually has, I hate this title, but it's Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I I like to put it in context of the time because that was a very desperate time for people, and I think that that was a powerful book because my guess is it probably helped people, it helped them understand the world in a very fundamental way at a time when people desperately needed it. And hopefully we're sort of coming out of a period like that. 2020 was one of those very dark times in history in some sense, but we're ending it on a good note. I'm very hopeful for 2021.
Garry, thank you for having office hours with us.
Thank you for having me. Such a pleasure and an honor.